It's been a while since we've tackled some Dungeon Crawl Classics Dying Earth. It's been a while. Hey everybody, Jordan here. The PH is silent, and no, this wasn't like a gimmick. I have been doing some remodeling and fixing of my basement and game room. Various water pipes burst, and we kind of coupled that fix with some other stuff. One of the reasons I haven't been making videos is because I don't really have a space to make videos. But with this cobbled area I've created back here, I've dusted some stuff off. And today I want to talk about the Witch for Dungeon Crawl Classics. A little bit cleric, a little bit wizard. Let's dive in. All right. Hi, everybody. We're here with more Dungeon Crawl Classics. We're going to talk about the Witch specifically, which was a little odd. And the first time I read it, I'm like, I don't get it, especially the curses. But after rereading it, it does make sense. And it's a pretty interesting class because it feels like a cool hybrid of a cleric and a wizard. You have a lot of offensive spells, but you are still bound to a greater power. And this is kind of what like a warlock, in my mind, this is what a 5e warlock should feel like, because you've bound yourself to something and it has influence over you in certain ways with certain spells that you use. I don't, not to compare Dungeon Crawl Classics to 5e a whole bunch, because there's really no reason to compare the two, but I enjoy the thematic flavor of the Witch a lot more than the thematic flavor of a 5e warlock. You are a dark-eyed summoner of demons, a silk-clad royal seeking hidden power, a forest-dwelling necrophage luring wanderers to their doom. You spend the last days of the dying earth weaving the weft of magic and searching for the profane and the beautiful, the weird, the grotesque, performing saturnal rituals to open pathways to subworlds and laying curses on those who would oppose you. Lots of rituals, lots of cool dark pacts. We're going to go through this. And as before, we have to jump between the player's Librum and the practical guide to magic. A witch has 1d5 hit points each level. And at first level, you need to make a pact with some overworld creature. You could make this creature yourself, but there is a whole bunch that come with the Dungeon Crawl Classics Dying Earth set. And after you make that pact, it influences certain things like weapon training and favored spells that you have. I'm using favored spells incorrectly, but it's like you have an affinity with certain spells that are related to the entity you've made the pact with. And your alignment can't be against the alignment of the thing that you are going to pick. So since at first level we need to make a pact, we'll jump over to the practical guide to magic here. Pacts, Squalms, and demonic corruption. We're going to look at some pact entities. So here are a list of all of the different entities that you can make a pact with. And if we go back to the player's Librum, I think here we go. So if we're chaotic, our alignment, then here are all the different pacts that we can pick. There's Adelmar, there's Cran, there's Sul.
Oh, Zuli, you nut now, come on.
Yaunt. And then if you're neutral, there's Kazdal, Dangot, the Totality, which I thought was really cool, Yob, the fish god. And if you're lawful, which is, they point out is very rare but can happen, there are some dead gods or ancient, like, unknown gods that you could worship. And it's kind of cool. But for the sake of fun, I'm going to be a chaos. We're going to do a chaos here, and we'll pick some kind of random fiend. Adelmar is one of the 5 demon lords of Old Lumarth. We have a sea demon. We have Demon of the Dark. So let's do Thial. Let's do Thial. Demon of the Dark. Commonly invoked in curses, Thial is a dark entity of the subworlds whose worshippers include witches. Thial's appearance is not well known, as he rarely manifests before even those who worship him, and when doing so, spikes the eyes of those he curses with his visible form. Sympathetic magics include spells associated with sight and blindness. Also important to remember. So after that, we get weapon training, which is we're proficient with all of those weapons. We don't wear armor, but if you do want to wear armor, it still imposes spellcasting problems, as if any spellcaster wearing armor. But in this case, if I like that if you make a ritual animal sacrifice and of a monster or an animal, and you use that leather to make hide armor, you reduce the penalty by 1 for spell checks. Witches draw their magic through otherworldly entities. It's not so much an understanding of magic like an arcane magician. It's more of a trade back and forth of power, and you can do that one thing like really well, 1 or 2 things really well. But you still have a pretty wide array of spells, and thematically, there's a lot of sacrificing of animals and monsters and stuff to aid you in your witchcraft. So first level witches spells are determined by their Pact entity. So we go to Pable 3-2, and it's affected by our personality score. My apologies, we go to table 312, which has the spells known by level, and that is augmented by our personality score. So every plus to our personality, we're going to have more spells known at whatever level. You start with 3 known spells and 3 Squalms, and we'll get to Squalms in a little bit. And here's a list of the witch/divine spells of the game. So a lot of these have little things next to it. And if we look down here, sympathetic spells of subworld entities are the hashtag, or Iconothorpe? Forget the name of that. And then neutral entities and overworld entities, which would be more like gods and things like that. So looking at this, because our sympathetic is the hashtag, we can roll 3 spells, and we need to have at least 1 of these sympathetic spells. So in this case, it would be paralysis or resist heat, cold or heat. Darkness would be another one. And since our one of our things is based on sight, thematically, darkness would be a really good one. So would demonic summoning, demon summoning, which would be kind of interesting. So here are the spells, and it's a mixture of spellcasting operates the same way. It's a mixture of divine and arcane, though, when you look at this spell list. And in Squalm is the ability to cast curses, and every witch starts with this spell. So you can Spellburn, but unlike regular Spellburn, or even Magician Spellburn, which is completely different as well, Ritual Spellburn, I have to make a ritual sacrifice in order to spend my own stats, but you can store it for later. So let's say you're fighting a monster, and after that monster is dead, you do a ritual a ritual sacrifice honoring your patron in some way with this monster that you killed. Based on the number of hit die that monster had, you can burn up to your level a certain number of strength, agility, or stamina. And when you burn that, it just kind of sits there and waits to be used for the next 24 hours, and then it'll go away. So you burn your own stats, but you can only do that not in the heat of the moment. You have to make a choice going forward. You slay this creature, and you dedicate it to your Pact entity, and you burn 2 points of strength that you decide to hold for a later casting, so it kind of sits with you. Later, when you're running around, you're surprised by some creature, and you want to cast a spell, and you decide in the moment you can you decide to burn 1 level and then use that other past spell burn to aid your spell. There is a way where you can take on demonic corruption in the now and be able to spell burn in the now, which brings us to demonic corruption. So instead of regular corruption, since all of your stuff is kind of tied to these otherworldly entities. Even the lawful ones, I guess, would kind of fall into this as well. You have demonic corruption. So whenever you cast a spell, every time that you roll a natural 1, you have to roll on this special table for demonic for a demonic corruption. And that is augmented by your luck, so less is better, because you don't necessarily want to be corrupted. But the cool thing about this is it's kind of like the cleric, where if you roll a natural 1, the next time you accrue, I forget what the clerics call it, but hi everybody, Future Jordan here. I got this slightly wrong, so I wanted to clarify while I was editing. If you fail a spell check, so most spells, I need to roll like a 12 or higher to have some effect. If you fail that, you have a growing demonic corruption, and this is not unlike a cleric. When a cleric fails a spell roll, they have disfavor with their god, and it starts at 1. If I have demonic corruption, I fail a spell roll, I add 1 to my demonic corruption. I now will roll a quote natural 1, or have like a natural 1 effect on rolling a natural 1 or 2. If I fail another spell check, it goes to 3. So then if I roll between a 1 and a 3, I will have this like bad demonic corruption roll that I have to do. And that is the roll that is augmented by luck. So if I have a +2 in luck, I would have a -2 when I actually roll my d20 into that. Higher stuff is bad for demonic corruption. Lower stuff is not good, but easier to manage. And that is how it works. It's exactly the same as the cleric disfavor ability or disfavor mechanic, only it's called demonic corruption. Back to past Jordan. If I fail on a 1, I get this demonic taint, and it stays with me, and it says for like a month. So you have this for a while. And if I fail another spell, it goes up and up and up to the point where if I have a demonic taint of 8 and I have to roll for a spell and I roll a 5, well, that demonic taint goes up to 9 because it increases in value. Now that 9, let's say I have a 9 of demonic taint. If I ever roll a natural 1, I would add +9 to this roll to see what kind of corruption I get. And then after a month or after a certain sacrifice or an in-game thing, you can get rid of this demonic taint that's part of your body. But you also could get corrupted and have these lasting terrible things that happen to you. So looking at some of these, like the witch's face takes on the appearance of their pact entity, so you get pointed teeth or snake-like pupils, things like that. Some other bad ones are demonic tongue. You can only speak using the language of the subworld until the next Sabbath. The Sabbath is like the month-long thing, or however you get rid of this demonic taint, kind of the witch loses their sense of sight in the now peculiar Earthlight and can only see in another plane or on other planets. Otherwise, you're blind. So some interesting things that kind of happen with demonic taint. And then Squalms. So looking up Squalms are basically curses. And you have a single spell that's called Squalms, and you can use that to apply curses to other creatures. And this was a little odd for me, so it took me a minute to kind of get into what this actually did. So we're going to look at the actual spell in Squalm. So in Squalm is you invoke a curse based on your entity, and this is very DCC Dying Earth kind of flavor, where I say you're gonna for the end of your days, you're gonna always fall out of bed when you wake up if you're ever in a town. It's like a weird thing like that. And then that will happen forever because it's this weird curse that's put upon you. And you can't just remove curse. There's usually something you have to do to get rid of this in the long run. So when I cast and Squalm to make a curse, you roll a regular spell, and it'll tell you which kind of curse you could give. So at a 12 to 13, I just inflict a -1 luck penalty for 24 hours on the target. But for 14 to 17, I can do Curse of Doubt, Curse of Haplessness, Curse of Blindness, Curse of Blight, Curse of Discomfort, or Discomfiture, Curse of Everlasting Tedium, and it goes on and on and on till you can get to Curse of the Overworld. So then, what are curses? And we have to go all the way back to check out some of the curses that are here. And they're kind of wild. So we have moderate, major, and minor curses, and they're sectioned out so that when you're learning curses, you know, hey, a moderate curse will have this level of DC associated with, and a major curse will have this level of DC associated with it. So casting in Squalm, you get to select some of these, and ideally you're making it thematic. So if I have like the curse of, well, let's look of Curse of Helplessness. So with this curse, the witch turns the subject's arms or implements against them, breaking or even injuring the victim when they are used. To invoke this, the witch chants this rhyme while tying a knot to a piece of string obtained from the victim's clothing. You cast this rhyme, and now, if they're cursed, the subject has a -1 luck while cursed, and whenever using a weapon they are proficient in, the chance for a fumble when attacking with that weapon doubles. Thus, a warrior who would normally fumble on a natural 1 now fumbles on a 1 or 2. The curse can only be lifted by somehow capturing the cry of a newborn and entombing it along with an article of clothing worn by the victim and one of their weapons in an unmarked grave. Really random stuff. Another one we would have is inordinate umbrage. By means of this curse, the witch causes a victim to become violently incensed at even the smallest of slights and require such slights with violent response. To effect the curse, the witch must touch the victim's face with some substance from their own body, such as spit or an eyelash, and then recite the following verse. Henceforth, the victim has a -2 luck penalty and will take umbrage at the slight perceived or real from any man, woman, child, or other creature. And in this case, a slight being an insult to the person being cursed. So if somebody does this, such as a server delivering a soup that is too cold or a peasant seeking to cheat them before, the victim has to make a D12 will save, or they will violently strike at the offender regardless of the legal, moral, or situational consequences.
Hey! What the hell is this?
The curse can only be broken when the witch is prevented from making a sacrifice at the next Sabbath, whether via the witch's death or by other means. Should the victim of the curse be slain before the curse is lifted, the victim manifests as an undead wraith to continue wreaking their wrath upon the world. Kind of a weird part of the class, but very thematic to the world of Dying Earth. The last really interesting thing that witches have is an ability called Transfer Vitality, which is the clerical equivalent of Lay on Hands. So if there is a willing creature, you can invoke the power of your entity that you've made a pact with, and you can transfer health from one creature to another. So the person you're transferring health from, they receive negative to their physical stats. So if they want to do stamina, I can take 2 stamina from that person, and then I can use that stamina as hit dice to heal someone else. I can't steal more stamina than I am of level. So a level 1 witch can only steal 1 point and deliver 1 hit die, but a level 4 witch could potentially steal 4 and do 4 hit die. And then that person will regain their strength, agility, or stamina over the course of natural healing. The cool thing about this, though, is you can use this against a monster. So if you want to cast this against a monster, you can roll. You have to be able to touch them. So you touch the creature, and let's say you are a level 4 cleric and you roll fairly high. We'll say a 14 to 19. You can do 2 dice from that creature. So that creature's strength, agility, or stamina go down by 2. But for the sake of record keeping, we're not going to actually lower their stats, but we're going to go down the dice chain for their attacks. So if that creature is normally at a D20 for their attacks, we're just going to lower them by 2. So it's going to go from a D20 to a D16 to a D14. So now that creature is rolling with a D14 on their attacks. Meanwhile, you're using those 2 transfer vitalities to give a couple of D8s to your VAT thing. It's kind of an interesting idea, and I like that you can use this offensively, and that negative to the die, to their attacks and stuff, their action die, I should say, that lasts until they naturally heal those points back. So if the monster got away with a D14 attack die, the next day his attack die would be a D16, and the next day after that his attack die would be a D20. That's cool. Like, and think about how when monsters get away, or like the big bad guy gets away, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, but it's like, it's okay. We know that he won't come after us because he won't be at full strength for 3 days because I transferred vitality from him. And they're like, okay, we have some time to like regroup and figure it out. Kind of a cool thing. And it makes monsters escaping not as bad as it feels sometimes, where you're like, oh, we didn't get the bad guy. I kind of like that a lot. It's really interesting. And the idea that healing should be hard. It shouldn't be hard, but in Dying Earth, healing is hard. And so transferring health like that is a cool way of like, hey, barbarian, can I have some of your agility? I shouldn't say barbarian, but like, hey, warrior, can I have some of your agility so that I can, heal our magician back up to full? Pretty interesting. One thing that I didn't see with this witch is that you don't have mercurial magic like you would with a magician or a wizard, even a cleric at some points. So kind of interesting there. I'm sure you could incorporate it, or maybe I missed it. And then the last thing that I want to talk about, I probably have already said the last thing, is sympathetic spells. So we know that there are some sympathetic spells with our patron. And our patron, it was like blindness and darkness and things like that. So let's take the darkness spell, and you get to choose a spell and say, that is my sympathetic spell. And when you cast that, it goes up by 1 die level. So normally I cast it at a D20, but because it's my sympathetic spell, I'm going to cast it at a D24 up to a maximum of a D30. Meanwhile, other spells that you learn are cast at a D16. Whenever you take an enhanced sympathetic spell, you must also choose another spell to cast at a reduced die. And this reflects the growing strength of the Pact and the weakening of your ability to manipulate your other magics. So I'm getting stronger with my Pact entity, but I don't really understand how other magics work. And it's a fun flavor back and forth, and it really pushes you to, I want to play in this direction, and I like that a lot. So you get a couple spells that you are really good at the sacrifice of a couple spells that you are not so good at, but you still know and could use in a pinch. Using luck and all that other stuff, burning luck, applies exactly the same. Yeah. And that's the witch. I don't know. What do you guys think about the witch? This is definitely one of the more complex classes. I feel like every class we've gone over has been very complex, except, well, even the VAT thing was pretty complex. The Dying Earth is a little, it's advanced, advanced dungeon crawl classics, we should call it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to keep making videos despite all of the mess around me, and hopefully I can get my game room back to normal at some point and not covered in a fine layer of sheetrock dust. It's very fun. I have a Patreon if you're interested. I've been writing some games and other things there, and I would love for you to check it out if you were so curious. And with that, I'll see you on the Discord. DCC Day's coming up, so make sure you go to your friendly local game store. Goodbye.